So,
why is this important to us? I think this conversation is important because America is perhaps the oldest democracy that we know in the world today. Incidentally, we share a lot in common. That is Nigeria and the United States. Indeed, our political system is patterned after the American presidential democracy, so we share that. Before we adopted the American system in 1979, we had practiced or experimented with the parliamentary system. Secondly, just like America, we are a nation that is multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-religious, multinational. America is also a multiracial, multilingual country. Indeed, it is described as a nation of immigrants. In virtually every part of America, you have people of different races who have now been welded into one single entity, which makes the country attractive, because what we see in practice in the United States is what I choose to describe as unity of diversity. And don't forget, Nigeria has been striving to have unity in diversity. So I'm hoping that in the future, we'll also be able to talk about the unity of our diversity. Having laid that background for why we are here, why America is of interest, of course, we are partners. We've had very strong diplomatic relationship, business relationship, political relationship, economic relationship. And so what happens in the US interests us as a country. First, because that is where we patterned our political system after. So we also need to know how they practice it and see what lessons we can share, both from our end and their end. So the background that I need to give to this talk is that there are certain things that are specific and uniquely American in terms of its constitutional order that it has. First is the principle of limited government, meaning that the government is limited by constitution. Now, not only that, it emphasizes the rule of law, which I think he referred to and Amarachi also referred to, such that individual rights and freedoms are respected. That is very, very important. The second one is that America guarantees the autonomy of its component units, in this case, the states and the counties. It is indeed a country that you can say it has a strong tradition of local self-governance, a very strong tradition of local self-governance. Furthermore, I can say that there is something that is also unique about America. Its commitment to the principle of checks and balances in governance, ensuring that no arm of government intrudes into the functions of the other. So you can see checks and balances, separation of powers exemplified in the American system, apart from the fact that, as I mentioned before, it does not have a single cultural identity. It does not have a single cultural identity because, like I said, it's a nation of immigrants. Again, we all know about the economy. The economy is basically capitalist in orientation. It is driven by respect for private enterprise and the primacy of private enterprise, and allow the private sector to determine the direction of the economy, while government merely acts as the regulator. Indeed, I can tell you that America as it is today can run without a president. The way the nation is structured, the way the system is structured. Apart from the ideology of capitalism that I referred to, the other point that we need to make is that government tries to arrive at its decisions by consensus. Consensus building is a constant thing in the US system. So back to US 2024 elections, which is our focus here. I think that generally speaking, elections in America, like it is here, are contested by candidates who are a lot of the time members of political parties, although we have independent candidature once in a while. Such candidates must have emerged through the process of what we call primary elections. You also have caucuses and conventions. I'm sure we also have that in Nigeria. Primary elections, caucuses, conventions throw up the candidate. Now, this process may not necessarily be stipulated in the Constitution, but it has developed over time and it has become a tradition and accepted by the people. The next question I'd like to ask us, and I want us to advert our minds to that, why do we need elections? Why elections in the first place? I think first thing to note is that elections provide us it makes provision for competition for office. Not only that, by competing for office is a means of holding government accountable. This point was emphasized by Michael, that it's a means of holding government accountable. It also provides an opportunity for the voters to dialogue with the political parties. It's an opportunity for the voters to dialogue with the political parties, for the society, that's all of us, to dialogue with the state, that is government. Again, it also provides an opportunity for the transfer of power from one government to the other. The beauty of the American system lies in the fact, in my view, that in the transfer of power, you always have it in a very seamless fashion. And what brings that about? Every presidential candidate is expected to accept the outcome of the elections. That's number one. You commit yourself to the acceptance of the outcome of the elections. Secondly, what you also do is that you do not challenge the process. You commit yourself to the fact that the system has an inbuilt self-regulatory mechanism that ensures that the process will be fair and fair. But when this is questioned, then we have crisis. The only time we have had that question was in 2020, but that was addressed. Now, back to the meat, the nitty-gritty of what I need to discuss, the process of the election. And this is where I want our younger students here to take note. Mr. Irvin has said that the process of elections in America, just like here, elections are done by registered voters in 50 states and the capital, which is Washington, D.C., 51 of them. Now, the elections are cast not directly for the president or the vice president. Elections are cast for representatives. And those representatives at the state level are called electors. These electors would constitute what you call an electoral college at the level of each state. Ironically, it is these electors that would ultimately and finally elect the president. Now, he said earlier, and I want to challenge that, this is my own view, he said that the American founding fathers probably devised this system to ensure that they remove the tyranny of the majority. But have you thought about the tyranny of the minority? After all, you have in the Electoral College all over America 538 electors. Those are the people that determine who's going to be president. And once you are able to get 270 out of these 538, you are as good as being declared the president. So, and this is why I said it emphasizes the autonomy of the component. You can see the role that the states play. They are in fact the one driving the electoral process, not the federal level. It is what comes from the state. So let me continue. I've just told you that we have 538 electors, and how are these electoral votes determined? He made references to it. Every state is allocated a specific number of electoral votes. And how they came about that is an addition of the number of senators you have per state, which is usually 2, plus the number of House of Representative members you have in Congress. That becomes the allocation for that particular state. But it differs because of the sizes. You know, just that like they have what they call congressional districts in America. Here we have federal constituencies. Our representatives come from federal constituencies. Theirs come from congressional districts. So the larger your congressional district is, the higher the number of electoral votes you have. For example, California has, I think, 55 electoral votes. 54 electoral votes. Oh, okay, they lost one. Okay. 54 electoral vote for California. And yes, you have a state like Maine having 4. Am I right? You have Arizona having, I think, 11. And then you have Pennsylvania with 19. So you can imagine that these votes, the electoral votes, differ from state to state. So let's go on. Each state casts as many electoral votes as the total number of its senators and House of Rep. I've said that. And it did tell us that you have 100 senators and 435 representatives to make the total number. But the interesting thing about the Electoral College is that usually at election time, and please take note of this is very interesting. In America today, former President Trump has a number of states that he doesn't bother about campaigning in. Same with Kamala Harris. Because you have a division into what we call the blue and the red states. The red states are for the Republicans, the blue states are for the Democrats. And once a state is tagged blue, it means it's a traditionally democratic state. So largely, presidential candidates don't go to those states because they have already pocketed the electoral votes. Okay. And so the same thing with the Republicans. So what follows in general elections? I need to quickly mention this. Once the state electors meet, they obtain what you call, the executive in that state obtains what it calls a certificate of ascertainment to know the individuals that have been voted for to become electors. And the electors meet, after they must have voted for specific candidate, they also come up with a certificate of vote that will now be transmitted to the Congress. The Congress, when it meets, will combine all the reports, all the certificate of vote from all the states to now decide who they will choose for as president. And once they make that announcement, that's final. But before the announcement, which is usually done on January 6th, I think that's when the Congress meets to take a decision on that. Yes. The thing is, before January 6th, by the time people vote and the counting is done, everybody would already have known who will be president. Once the person has crossed the 270 benchmark that I referred to earlier. So, Nigeria has its regional, religious, and ethnic fault lines. But I also see some fault lines in America. I've just told you about the red state and the blue state. And then you have what you call the swing state. The swing state or the battleground state. You must have heard of it on TV. Battleground states are states where no particular candidate can say that they can reasonably win. It can go either way. And that's why they are concentrating on battleground states, which are 7 in number this time. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada, and all of this. So 7 of them in number. I want to conclude by saying that from what I've said, every state has its own entrenched mechanism for institutionalizing democracy. The United States is not an exception. What has made America to stand out is the fact that it commits itself to the rule of law, which is the cornerstone of its constitutional order. The other is the willingness of the presidential candidate to accept the will of the American people as expressed by the outcome of the elections. And thirdly and finally, is the commitment of all candidates and parties to a peaceful transfer of power. I hope they will stick to that. Thank you.